Well, hello everybody. This is my first live stream in a while. It's been quite a bit, couple of months, but since I've done it. But I am really excited to have on a really great guy, one of the first supporters for DM Tales way back when I got started. So one of the reasons why I've kept on going with this channel is because of this person. But I am really grateful to have Martin Thomas, otherwise known as Daddy Rolled a One, here on the stream today. Martin, how you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you so much for having me on, Wes.
I'm really excited to have you on. We're going to talk about why today is the day that you're going to be on in a little bit, because it's a
Perfect.
very exciting thing that is happening. Really excited to talk about that. But I do want to kind of get to know you a little bit for some folks who are regular viewers of my channel who may not be watching your channel, although everybody should be watching your channel. So we'll scold everybody there if you're not. So this is the question I ask everybody, and it's probably one
Okay.
that you've answered 4 billion times. How did you get started in this wonderful and strange hobby?
Sure, no problem. So it was 1981,
Uh
so
huh.
kind of dating myself there. But we had just moved. My family moved. My dad had a job where he moved pretty consistently, and
Okay.
so I was never in any one place for a very long period of time. So we had just moved. I had a very hard time making friends, and I was kind of the shy, quiet kid. And I was reading um, some books on King Arthur mythology. So that's just kind of like what I was into. And some people in my class saw that I was reading that, and they came up to me and they said, "Hey, I see you're reading about King Arthur. Have you ever read Tolkien?" And I was like, "Yeah, I've read The Hobbit. I'd started, Fellowship of the Ring. I hadn't finished yet."
Okay.
And then they said, "Hey, would you be interested in playing a game where you can pretend like you're Strider, like in the game?" I was like, "That sounds pretty cool." I was kinda a little confused, but I was like, "Yeah, it sounds kinda interesting." And that was them introducing me to Dungeons& and Dragons. It was Moldvay Basic 1981, the Errol Otis cover. That's what
Okay.
we were playing. And, so that was in fall of '81, and then like, the next spring, so, like, 6 months later, my mom gave me the box set. It's actually on my shelf back here, it's just hard to see.
Okay.
But that was an Easter gift, from
And you
her.
got Moldvay, not
Moldvay, yeah.
Mentor. Okay.
Mentor wasn't out yet. So Mentor came out in '83.
Was it 83? Okay, I always thought it
Yeah,
was 80. Okay, my brain is.
yeah. So yeah, Moldvay's '81, and so I started playing with that, and then basically I've been playing ever since. So that's the short version of how I got started.
So you did not do the classic. Yeah, I graduated college, got married, and had kids, and stopped playing.
Yeah, I mean there was a small window of time. So after that, so we moved again, and during that time I lost my group, so I wasn't playing. I was still involved. I was subscribing to Dragon Magazine, and I was like, well, because we'd moved, now I was in high school when I'd learned I was in junior high school. And I
Uh huh.
thought, well, maybe I'll reinvent myself and not be the nerdy kid, which is just not going to work out for me. So just, and so I very quickly found a group of people that were like me. And so I got back into gaming, but they were switching to Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay.
Gotcha. Okay.
So I played that, and then in college, basically, I did kind of again lose that group because we all went to different places.
Okay.
Nobody in my college dorms were players. I'd asked around, and or at least if they were, they didn't want to admit it, I guess. And so um, that was like my small little window where I wasn't really actively playing, but I was still, again, I was involved. I was reading Dragon. I was working on my campaign world.
Okay.
I would spend hours in the college library checking out books to build my world. And that's the campaign setting that I ended up using, um, just since we're talking about it. So uh, I ended up working on advertising for Wizards of the Coast. I worked at an ad agency here in Los Angeles, and that agency's New York office handled the advertising for Hasbro.
Okay.
And
Okay.
once Hasbro bought Wizards, um, they wanted to staff the account, but they didn't want to staff it out of New York. They wanted to staff it out of LA since we are on the same time zone as Wizards.
Gotcha.
And so once I found this out, I went to my boss and I said, "Hey, I play Magic the Gathering. I've played Dungeons and Dragons. I read Dragon Magazine. I like brought all my stuff in." And I was
Okay.
like, "You need to put me on this account. I need to handle this." And she was like, "Okay, that sounds good to me because I don't know what any of this stuff is. And so I went to a meeting. The people came down from Wizards into our conference room, and I'd spread all my stuff out on the table to show them that like I actually play this stuff. I already own it and I play it. And they were blown away. They were like, we never in our million years dreamed that we would meet someone handling the advertising that actually plays the games. And so they sent me the core rule books for 3.0.
Oh wow,
They
okay.
sent me the Star Wars D20. They sent me a ton of like Pokemon and Magic cards and like all this kind of stuff. And so my team, my staff, they were like, you need to teach us how to play this game so that we can talk to the client about it, understand what it is. And so that was
Oh.
what got me kind of back in playing consistently.
Okay.
And I ran a 3.0 game for them starting in May of 2001, which is actually still going. I still run that game.
That's awesome. I love it.
Yeah.
All right, so folks, if you're on the stream, so Martin's audio for me started going wonky and warbly. If it sounds okay to you, let me know, because it could just be with my sound system here, and it could be going out okay for all of you.
Yeah,
Sometimes
you're coming through kind of scratchy for me.
Am I coming through scratchy? I don't like this. So, let me see if I can fix this, because we don't want people to be upset the whole time we're doing this. So let me try to bring it live again. So give me 1 second here. Sound system settings. Actually, here, I'll do it in OBS. This is the fun of doing live streams, because it was working perfectly for us
Yeah, it was.
until about 3 seconds ago. Okay, how do I sound to you right now?
It's still warbly scratchy.
So I wonder if that is an internet issue on my part. There's a bit of static. Yeah, I can hear it. It kicked in all of a sudden, and I wonder if it's coming through OBS Ninja, of all things. Because you're hearing it, and I'm hearing it, and they're saying there's a little bit of static. So,
and it's only happening when you're talking.
Yeah, and it's only happening when you're talking for me too. So give me 1 second here. Let's see if we can mess things up. So as I am trying to fix this, yay! We are. You've played D&D. You got into BX and whatnot. What other games have you played?
So I played pretty much all of the TSR games back in the day. So Gamma World, Top Secret, Star Frontiers.
Okay.
Those were the big three Marvel superheroes. Definitely played that a lot. Probably of those, Gamma World was most often. And then Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay.
Okay.
And then, like, within the past, I'd say 15 years,
Okay.
played Savage Worlds, which I still play and like a lot. Modifius Star Trek I've done like the Warhammer 40K, like Rogue Trade, whatever that one is, like the role-playing game of Warhammer 40K. Torg, there was like a new Torg that came out.
Gotcha.
Played that. Realms of Cthulhu, Deadlands. Yeah, but pretty consistently now as a player, I'm playing Savage Worlds, but kind of round robin who's going to run.
Okay.
And so sometimes it's Cthulhu, sometimes it's Deadlands, sometimes it's Delta Green. It just depends, but it's all within the Savage Worlds mechanic framework. And then when I'm running games right now, so I still, like I said, I still have that kind of 3.0 game that it's combo 3.5 Pathfinder 1E, and then I'm running BX for my daughter and her friends.
That's awesome. And then, guys, I'm sorry about the audio system. I'm trying to figure it out. I refreshed your thing, but it just decided it wanted to go screwy. And of course, it was working for about 20 minutes before we got live.
Yeah, before we got on.
And I actually heard it go ka-chink, and it's like, what is that? So I'm going to try one more thing to screw it up, because, why not? Reload site. Yeah, let's reload the site. And we'll see if we screw up the stream completely. So Martin's still there. Enable guest director's microphone.
Oh, that didn't work.
There we go. Can you hear me, Martin?
I can hear you, but it's still having the same problem.
Yeah, I'm having the same problem too. I wonder if it's an OBS Ninja thing. So they're just having issues nowadays. I really do need to get on something else.
Do you want me to try to reload?
No, I've already reloaded you. I'm trying to see if I should use a different sample, but I can't do it while I'm live. So, oh well. Let's get back. Let's get back to talking. We'll just deal. If folks can listen and they're doing okay, that's fine. One person, Sharp Mountain Games, who is my friend John Frederick, who writes a couple really cool reviews. He pointed out that Static, I blame the Pinkertons, which is a wonderful reference to Wizards of the Coast for that. But so those are all the kinds of games you played. But you just went to DaveCon.
Yes.
And you played some games that people have not played people have not played forever. So
right.
What
yeah.
are two of the experiences you just had?
Yeah, so that's one of the things I talk about on my YouTube channel, but kind of like the history of how these games came to be, and how we got to whole cloth. It was a succession of different events that led to the creation of that game, and so DaveCon is named for 3 different Daves that are important in the history of role-playing games. So Dave Arneson, I think most people should know, he's the co-creator of Dungeons and Dragons with Gary Gygax. But there are 2 other Daves that were part of Dave Arneson's group of players in Minneapolis. Dave McGarry, who created the board game Dungeon with an exclamation point, Dungeon, and then Dave Wesley. Okay, and Dave Wesley had created a game. This is the short version, called Bronstein.
Okay,
and it's kind of hard to call it a game. It's a role-playing activity. It's a role-playing experience. Yeah. Okay. And so Dave Wesley's Bronstein games were what inspired Dave Arneson to create Blackmore. And Dave Arneson's Blackmore is what Gary Gygax saw and said, hey, we need to write that down and publish it and sell it to people and figure out how to do that. That's the short version.
Yeah,
okay, I got to play a Dave Wesley Bronstein game run by Dave Wesley, and it was modeled after the very first one that he ever ran.
Okay.
And so, and I got to play with Professor Dungeon Master was there, Baron DeRop, if you know him. Those were the 2 main guys. But there's a bunch. There's a bunch of YouTubers there that were all in this group, which was really cool.
Okay.
And so I got to experience what that game was like that Dave Arneson would have played in to make Dave think like, I want to run one of these games myself. And so very famously in that game, it was a surprise to the players. So the players showed up thinking they were going to play a war game. And Dave Wesley had all the miniatures set up, and he had everything set up to how they would normally play a miniatures war game. And what he did was say, hey, before we start, like, I just want to talk to you guys really quick. And like, here's who you're going to be playing. There's like this person in the town, and there's some students, and there's the chancellor of the university, and they're like, blah, blah, blah. Right.
Yeah.
And they all thought that was like the pre-game, like the kind of get ready, but that actually was the game. He had no intention of running the miniatures war game.
Okay.
So he surprised everybody. And one of the things that happened was, there were no rules that we would think of in the context of like a role-playing game. Right. So Dave Wesley gave everyone a role and said, you are this person, and these are your objectives. This is what you're trying to achieve. And as an example, Dave Arneson was a student who was a revolutionary type.
Right. Okay.
This game takes place in a fictional town called Bronstein, on the border. It's Germany, but on the border of France. Okay, and so there were some student revolutionaries, and Dave Arneson. One of the things that happened was Dave Wesley knew that Dave Arneson didn't get along with someone else in the group, and so he thought, what if I give them objectives where they would actually have to kind of work together and see what would happen.
Okay.
And he kind of just was stirring the pot, you say. And Dave Arneson didn't like this guy, and vice versa. And so they actually went up to Dave Wesley and said, hey, we're going to have a duel. And Dave Wesley was like, wait a second, you guys aren't even in the same part of town. And they said, oh no, like, well, you were talking to so-and-so, we ended up like moving around. And that was the thing Dave Wesley didn't expect. Like, he was calling people in one at a time to ask them what they were going to do. What he didn't realize is while he was doing that, all the other players were like, oh, you're this guy, you're this guy, you're this guy. And they started interacting. And that's what became the role play aspect. and Dave
And
Wesley
he
wasn't
thought the whole thing
expecting
was a
that.
failure because of that, right?
Oh gosh, Wes, I can't hear you. I'm
He
sorry.
You can't hear me anymore? Oh dear, hold
Can't hear.
on. Oh my gosh. This is so much fun when the
Are you
technology.
muted?
I am not muted. Give me a second.
Oh goodness.
We can hear you
I
just
feel I
fine.
feel like I'm bad luck on your
They can
show
hear
today.
me just fine. I'm going to go. Don't worry. Don't worry. Don't worry. All right, can you hear me?
Now I can.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
I can, and it's actually not scratchy.
I know I unplugged my thing and replugged it in because it decided it was going to go wonky for some strange reason. So, but Dave Wesley thought that was completely a failure
Yes,
that
100%. He
that had
was
happened.
not happy. And then after the fact, everybody came up to him and said, "When are you going to run this again?" And he was like, "What?" And so, I mean, just to give you the short, well, it's not short at this point. I'm famous for telling long story. So he ran two more Bronstein games where he actually um, tried to curtail what the players could do. And he kind of said, like, here's your objectives, and you can do this, this, or this. And the players were like, they did not like that at all. So
Okay.
Bronstein 2 and 3 were failures because the players didn't like having their actions sort of, curtailed. Like I said, they wanted to be free to do what they want, which was what Dave Arneson did when he challenged this other guy to a duel. Dave Wesley had no idea that that was going to happen. And so then Bronstein 4 came out later, and that he went back to
Letting
the
anybody do whatever they
freedom of
wanted to
action.
do.
But again, there were no rules. So
Yeah.
one of the things that I think is I've come to learn as I've been learning about this is you've got role playing and you have games. Okay, so you had war games, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then you have role playings, which are, I call them activities. I don't know if that's a right word to use,
Okay.
but D&D is when you have a role playing game,
So they're
and
the
it
two
wasn't called
elements
that when it was
together.
first published,
Yeah.
right? But it was taking the role play aspect and then figuring out how to implement rules for that. And
Mm-hmm.
I've heard various stories about how and why that happened. Um, I think one of the stories that I heard, and this is not me saying this is kind of hearsay that I've heard from other people. One of the things I've heard is that Gary had a little trouble understanding the role play aspect because he wasn't necessarily there when it was being worked on by Dave Wesley,
Gotcha.
right?
Okay.
And Dave Arneson and people like that. He was used to war games, these, specific rules. And so Gary wanted the rules to help explain how to do the role play aspect. Now, again, I don't know that that's true. I don't think the game would have been successful without the rules. So whether that's true
Right.
or not, I think having those rules is what created something that was so fascinating and what captured everybody's imagination.
Yeah. I mean, it
I think
created
it
something you could transport and hand to someone and say, "Hi, we do this."
exactly, and it kind of, now it didn't explain it well, but it tried to explain how to do it, right? And I
Right.
think if it was just the role play, and then you said, oh, and then this one impartial guy just figures out what happens, that's not going to cut it, right?
Right.
So,
Right. Right.
and again, I'm oversimplifying this, and I'm making it seem like we're having fun, but like I think that's kind of the process that we get to, and I think that it was an inspired piece of adding these mechanics to help explain how to role play and getting us to the game
Mm-hmm.
that we all enjoy and the hobby that we all enjoy.
And we're going to talk about it because you do tell your long stories, but they're really good stories. We'll talk. But you played Bronstein. What did you play in Bronstein?
So I played student G, I want to say it was. So basically what happened was Dave Wesley, when he first did Bronze, he had certain roles in mind. So again, there was the chancellor of the university, there were some students, student A, student like whatever, right? There was the town, forgetting all the rules, but there was a town guard
Yeah.
people. There were some I don't want to spoil it for people who might play, so I'm going to
Yeah.
skip over
Don't
some of
ruin.
them,
Yeah.
but
Don't give details. Like, what did you do?
yeah, but there's like, and so there's just wait, there's government people, there's religious people,
Mm-hmm.
there are like s- um administration for
Mm-hmm.
like the city, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
There was noble, and there was all these students, and the students are kind of grouped into two groups. There's students who are revolutionaries,
Mm-hmm.
and there's students who want to support keeping, for lack of a better word, like the monarchy, want to support them staying in power for whatever reason.
Gotcha.
And I was a revolutionary student. So I was with that group. And the game started, this is funny. And someone else pointed this out to me, and I never thought of this before. The game starts in a tavern where there's been a brawl between the revolutionary students and the non-revolutionary students. That's the setting for how it starts.
So the
And
origin of role
all
playing as a game type thing literally starts in a tavern.
Yep, and I didn't even think about
Good.
it at the time, and when I was telling one of my friends, and he was like, "I'm gonna decide that that's the reason why all D&D games start in a tavern is because that first game started." And I was like, "That's brilliant." I never had connected it even when I was in it in the moment. Um, but we all start out in jail, and
Okay.
so as an example, my student, his goals were get out of jail. so and then don't get thrown out of the university for being involved in a bar brawl,
Okay.
and don't get blamed for starting the fight, because it was in my write up. I didn't start the fight, and it actually says basically I wasn't really involved in the fight. I just happened to be there at the time when this fight broke out, and all of the students combined got arrested.
Gotcha.
So my goals then, I'm going around trying to talk to people like, can you help me get out of jail? Because one of my other objectives was I had no money. My
Okay.
money had been taken by what I thought was one of the town guards. The last time I'd seen it, it was with one of them. So I was trying to get it back.
Gotcha.
And so through the course of talking to this, I ended up talking to one of the nobles, and he's trying to help us get out of jail. And I was like, what I really need is to get my money back, because one of the town guards stole. And he had play money, right? And he
Okay.
just like, here you go, and just gave it to me. I was like, well, that counts. I didn't get it back from the guard, but I got my money. So I was like keeping tally of like, have I accomplished my objective? So I actually did accomplish all of my objectives. And then what happens at the end of the game was Dave Wesley says, all right, we're going to vote for the best person who like did the things to accomplish what they
Okay.
were supposed
Okay.
to do. And I didn't promote myself forward because I felt like my goals weren't that, like, my goals were very
They were very
like
simple and straightforward.
and individual. They
Yeah.
weren't helping anybody else, just
Yeah.
me. Whereas other people were like, Viva the revolution. They were like that, doing that. And so those are the people that like we voted for. Was
Okay.
like, that was the person that was like, did the best job trying to recruit more people to,
Okay.
be
Okay.
revolutionaries,
Okay.
kind of thing. So yeah, but that was the game. So there's a voting mechanic at the end, but other than that, like, there was no, like, I've played LARPs before at conventions, and
Yeah.
to me this was like a LARP.
So it's
And I didn't
yeah, that's what you had said in your video on the subject. It was as
Yeah,
close to
and
a
I didn't
LARP as anything.
think that it was gonna be like that going into it, and I was pleasantly surprised. It was just a lot of fun. It's mostly just talking. It's just talking with other players and trying to figure out what are their motivations, and
Hmm.
can I use them to accomplish my goals. So,
King Eric, the greatest of all, broke into chat where everybody else is making fun of me having dial-up internet for the warbly
ah.
audio. So the game is Berkeley in the 1960s. Yeah, that's
Yeah, I mean, so
sure.
that game took place in it's either 68 or 69, and there's still some, because memories are bad.
Yeah.
Some people just they don't remember, and there's arguments about whether
Yep. Yep.
was it
Yep.
68 or 69. But that time period, 100%.
Yeah.
It
So
was
the
like they
game
were,
definitely is keep getting that era of
yeah,
time for us culturally, and it's throwing it back to the
yeah, it's setting it in a different setting, but
yeah.
like as far as like you said, culturally, what was happening at the
Hmm.
time,
Hmm.
it 100% makes
Yep.
sense. And you also have to remember these guys who were playing were all college students at the time, or
Yeah.
just recently
So it's
graduated.
their world.
Yes.
So how long did your session take?
Um, It was probably, I mean, it was less than 4 hours. It went really fast, and it didn't end the way Dave Leslie had anticipated. So, basically what happened was, well, again, I don't wanna spoil too much, but
Okay.
there was a bloodbath at the very end. I talked about this in my video,
Yeah. Yeah.
but,
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
a bunch of people attacked some other people, and they were just like, we're doing this, and they went up to Dave Wesley, because he just sits up in the room and kind of like lets you come to him if you
Just
need
the
something.
puppet master.
And I got swept up in this because I was with these people when they decided to do that, and I was a little confused, like, hey, what's going on? And then one of the people betrayed what I thought he was going to do, and that threw me off. And so I ended up being at the fight, but I didn't get involved in the fight. Like, I didn't fight, but like everybody basically ended up killing each other. It was it was just so funny and unexpected. And Dave Wesley's like, that's the first time that's ever happened. And while it was going on, other people were still talking and doing their things, because they didn't realize that like this was the big moment.
Right,
Like
because
the
this is
two
like a whole
big
world going on, and there's things that happen
Yes.
where you're not there.
Yeah. and there were like, I don't know, 30 players or something. I mean, there was a lot. There were a lot of people, and you just, in a conference room doing this. It was really funny. Yeah.
It's almost like they inadvertently did like a small sandbox West March
Yes.
just in this because
Yeah,
you have
and
them
I
over
think
here and
that's
you're over here and the bloodbath's going on and you're just getting coffee. Okay,
yeah,
let's
no,
go.
absolutely. And that's again, I think that that's why so many of those old school games kind of adhere to that model, that kind of West March model, because that's where it came out of. And when you consider also that these were also war gamers used to this idea of like having a specific objectives to achieve.
Right.
And also, unlike a standard role playing game that we would play now, there was a definitive endpoint. You have these objectives.
Mm-hmm.
We're going to finish at the end of the night, and it doesn't continue. You don't play that character
Yeah,
again,
there's
that
no
role.
campaign per
No,
se.
exactly. So
Yeah.
the campaign started later with a variant game of Bronstein called Brownstone,
Okay.
which is a Western. It's a Wild West that was run by a guy named Dwayne Jenkins, and he was part of this group in Minneapolis. So it was a Bronstein style game. It just took place in a Wild West town,
Right.
and that those were the first like campaigns where people would play the same character multiple times, and their decisions would impact what happened in the future.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
It just sounds like you. It was the way you described it was awesome. I think, and Professor Dungeon Master did a video on it.
yeah,
It just sounded so like that is really cool. And
yeah.
also
It was great.
then you have because he had also pointed out like all the people is like, oh, we don't like the theater kids. I'm like, you guys, that's what this whole thing started from. You're like,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah,
So it's neat to see that people are having that experience again before it, we're no longer able to have it. So that's kind of
yeah. I
cool.
mean, the fact that the guy who invented it was there and ran
It's
it for us
amazing.
was amazing, and I got to sit and just chat with him. And then the other game that I played there was a Blackmore style game.
Right.
So um, that one was interesting because it was so you have to remember all this stuff is happening concurrently, and they're testing things, they're trying
Yeah.
things out, or like whatever. So we played in this game. I wouldn't necessarily say it was a Blackmore game. It's a Blackmore style game,
Yeah.
but it was much more war game
Okay.
ish.
Okay.
So it took place in a Blackmore style world. And if you've ever seen Dave Arneson's first fantasy campaign book, I've showed it on my channel
Only your
before.
video on it.
That's fine. It's hard to come by. Um, he outlines like all these different troop types and stuff. That's a huge part of that book is armies and where they're based.
Right.
And this game was all about that. There was very little role playing in this
Okay.
one.
Okay.
It was we each had an objective. I was the bandits, and my objectives were to loot and pillage essentially. And um and some people were protecting the castle, and that castle was the original Castle Blackmore. And then there's all these people doing like different things. And so the role playing came from trying to make alliances with other people
Right. Right.
controlling their own armies, but I didn't have a personality. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
I didn't even have a name. I was bandit leader.
Right. Right.
And
Right.
so that was sort of what I would call like one of these kind of like an in-between step.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it almost in a way it was almost backwards from
Yeah, it
Bronstein
went
because it was so much.
almost back to wargaming roots and then
Yeah,
moved forward again.
but it was all happening again, like I said, sort of like at different times or at the same time, but trying to figure out like how do we want to make this work.
Yeah, it was this era of time where you had a group of it was a milieu. You just had these group of people who were into all these things and started experimenting because no one told them they weren't allowed to.
Right? No,
So
100%. It was really a think tank, and then what you get is that um, some of the people didn't like it. They didn't like that style of game, and so they left. And
okay,
when they left, those were sort of the people that were older than Dave Arneson. Dave Arneson was
he was the youngest,
not,
right?
yeah, he's either the youngest or of the youngest.
Okay,
And so a lot of people didn't like what he was doing, and they left. And I think by them leaving this group, they kept playing. They just didn't play with Dave, right? They kept playing the traditional war games.
right.
Them leaving and new people coming in that didn't have any context to know that Dave was, quote unquote, doing it wrong. That allowed him to kind of be free to kind of experiment and do more things and push
Yeah.
the envelope.
Well,
You
which
know,
is another example of even that whole I'm going to go play real games is very much steeped to the hobby from the very outset of
yeah,
it.
Yeah, all
No.
these, yeah, exactly.
Like, we've never gotten away. We've always been the middle school kids trying to sit at the cool table. We've just always been that. So,
Yeah, yeah.
and none of us have ever gotten there. So I don't know why we're still trying, but that's okay. So let's move on a little bit because I could talk
Yeah,
to you
sure.
about your experience with Bronstein forever because I found that whole thing fascinating.
Oh,
I do
thanks.
want to ask because you have this fun internet moniker, Daddy rolled
Ah,
a one.
yep.
Aside from the obvious that it's exactly what it says, what's the story behind this name?
So it's not really all that fascinating. It's just so I
But hold on a
had
second here. You can make anything fascinating. So let's
I
just
think
keep
I can
going.
make it I think I can make it long.
People do their workouts to your videos, so
I've
come on.
well, I've also heard people use them to fall asleep, and I know that sounds weird, and I actually appreciate that people just tell me that because I'm like, okay, I get it. Like, I'll try to do better and not have super loud noises or something if you're using this for that purpose.
You're a
And
soothing presence. Come on, just take
it's
it
so
for the
I always think my voice sounds terrible, but I guess most people think that about their own voice. But
sure,
yeah.
especially when
So
recorded.
uh, I I had been reading blogs. I got into so I was playing third edition, right? I told you
Right.
that, and around 2008 or so, I'd been running this campaign for like 7 or 8 years, and I was really getting disillusioned with the third edition 3.5 rules because
Hmm.
it's nothing against people that play that system. If someone ran it, I would play it in a heartbeat,
Yeah.
but I just found it was getting way too fiddly for my tastes and just too many layers.
Hmm.
And very much that is a system that rewards or that's system mastery,
Yeah.
and that is not something that a that I'm good at, and b that I'm really super interested in, right?
Yes.
So and again, nothing against people that are into that. It's just I know what my limitations are. And
Hmm.
so um I started looking for ideas, and I was on Ian World, and I came across, I think, somebody talking about this idea of Gygaxian naturalism, I think was the term. And that led me, and I was like, wait, people still talk about Gary Gygax? Like, I think he had just passed away. And so I guess
Okay.
maybe it was still, it was kind of like on
Hmm.
people's mind.
Hmm.
And that led me to I think I'm going to say Malachevsky. I'm never sure how to pronounce his last name. It looks like Malazewski, but I think technically it would be Malachevsky. But
Okay.
in any event, his Grognardia site.
Okay.
And that was his blog. And that got me into this idea of like, I think I want to blog as well. And I kind of discovered this whole blogosphere. It was the old school blogosphere, is very
Hmm.
popular in that kind of time period, popular within the niche, right?
Right.
And I decided I'm going to start my own blog. And so I told one of my friends I'm going to start it. My daughter had recently been born. She was at that point maybe 2 or 3.
Okay.
And they're like, you know what you should call it? And he's like, you should call it Daddy Rolled a One. And I was like,
Oh,
that's pretty
wow.
funny. And that was it. It was that simple. I was just like, I'm doing it. And then he's like, and he actually came up with, I had my logo shirt on yesterday, so I couldn't wear it today, but he came up with the logo of like, I was also getting into the art of crafting cocktails at
Right.
home, like with proper proportions and measuring
Uh-huh.
and proper glassware and all that stuff. He's like, you need a cocktail glass with the D20 would be like the
The
olive,
olive. I do
and
have
then
your logo on the screen right now. People can see it. So it's
and yeah,
perfect.
and then the sword is like and I was like, that's an awesome logo. So I went to my artist friend and I was like, hey, can you do this? And she's like, yeah. And she whipped it up and like exactly how I would have done it were I an artist. And that's just how it started. It's that's that simple.
Yeah, well, first off, did you ask him why Daddy rolled a one? Like, was he unimpressed with the kid, or what's going?
So it's so funny. I always took it as a slight against me that I'm just not a good D&D player, or something like that, right? That just like I just roll ones and I'm not great. And it didn't occur to me actually until I had my YouTube channel. And then somebody came in there and said something to what you just said, is like, it sounds like a slight against your daughter. And I was like, oh my God, I'd never even thought of that.
Or the fact that
And,
you're just like, now your life was over and you rolled a one. Now
yeah,
you're this now.
right.
So,
And then I have had other people that have come into the comments, and I've deleted these comments,
oh
but
boy.
they think I'm using daddy in a not a great use of that term.
Oh
Like,
dear.
and I was like, oh, come on, guys. Like, it's just, I'm a guy who plays D&D that has a kid, right? It's just I don't know how much more simple I need to make it.
Sometimes the tree, just a tree.
Yeah,
Right
exactly.
there. All right. So I do have a question though. So this is your, and for folks who don't know, if you first off go to Martin's YouTube channel, Daddy Rolled a One. It is fantastic.
Thank you.
Uh, but you have this wonderful cocktail, and you end all your videos. Here's what I'm listening to, and
Yeah.
here's what I was drinking while I was doing
Mhm.
it, which is just another like no one on the planet would think of doing that, which I think is hysterical. So in your martini glass, what's the green alcohol?
Oh, in that thing. So that it's not supposed to be green.
It's just
Technically,
tinted.
I thought it was a martini, so
Gotcha.
it should be clear.
Right.
I think just the green is just for branding.
That's
So
fine.
that's not an actual like an actual cocktail in that glass.
I'm, you could create a whole mythology about that, though.
I could have I should have come. That's a great question. I wasn't prepared for that.
It's an absinthe martini. Uh,
So I mean, it could be. Yeah, I mean, absinthe or green chartreuse would be your two choices, I think, for that.
there
So
you
yeah.
go. It's just like you can make you can make it into a magic item. It's a potion. It'd be great.
There you go.
It'd be
I'm
wonderful.
gonna work on that. I'm gonna workshop a cocktail.
This is what I'm here for. I do a service. So, and you talked a little bit about your channel. You are currently known as the RPG history YouTuber. To the point of Professor Dungeon Master goes on his site like you. This is the person I go to see when I want to know anything about the history of the game, which was like a huge watershed moment for you.
It really was. Yes.
But we did talk. Daddy Rolled a One. It predates your YouTube channel because I know you
Yes.
gave me a shirt before, which I should be wearing right now, before you had even
Yeah.
started doing YouTube. But what was your first intent for the channel? Because it wasn't to be the D&D history guy, right?
No, it wasn't at all. So I was actually inspired by so I guess I was inspired by three people. So Questing Beast was one,
Okay.
just doing reviews of old school products
Yeah.
because that's what I was into and still am. And then Professor Dungeon Master and his like older stuff, like his Caves of Carnage is what inspired me to run BX for my daughter rather than 5e and
Okay.
giving me ideas on how to run Keep on the Borderlands. So
Okay.
I was going to do a campaign for her, but I had just assumed I would use whatever the current version was, which was
Okay.
5e at the time. And I realized watching his channel that I would have much more fun running BX. And my daughter and her friends have no context because they'd never played
Yeah.
before.
So what do they
So
know?
they know that they're playing D&D. And I think over time they kind of understand that they're not playing the current version, but they just don't care and they
Right.
have no interest in learning the current version.
Okay.
So, and then honestly, you were another one, which is why I gave you the shirt and like
Uh,
because I was watching your channel because we were friends on Twitter at
yep.
the time. And so I thought like, okay, these guys are doing this. And so I decided to start a channel and my thought was I'm going to review things that other people aren't reviewing. That was one. And so I reviewed a product by Kelvin Green, who is, I call him a friend. I've never met him in person. He lives in England. He's an artist and a role-playing game creator.
Okay.
And he's followed my blog since almost day one. And that's how I know him. And like every year I do Movember to like, raise money for men's health awareness.
Mm-hmm.
And every year he donates to my campaign. And again, I've never met the guy in person. It's just like
Awesome.
he's that kind of nice, upstanding guy.
Okay.
And so he had come out with the product, and I thought I'm going to review this to try to get him some exposure.
Okay.
And I thought I would use the cachet that I built on Twitter, which is small, but for me it was big.
Right.
And use that to try to get some exposure. And nobody looks at stuff like that on Twitter, right? But I thought if I put a YouTube video, someone will look.
Okay.
So I created that video, and sorry, it's again one of my long stories. And then I thought, well, I'll review Savage Worlds. No one's talking about Savage Worlds. Everyone's talking about D&D
Right.
at the time. And those did okay, but they didn't get me anything. But one of the things that was happening was I was running the BX game for my daughter,
right,
and I was talking about it on Twitter. And so I'd go on there and I was like, it's BX this, BX that.
Mm-hmm.
And I would make it very clear. I'm running 1981 BX basic. And so I'm using up like half of my character strings in Twitter to explain what this game is. And I started chatting with people that had been following me for at that point for like years.
Okay.
And they would just go, I have no idea what that is. And I didn't realize it was relevant to me. I played D&D, but I didn't know what that was. And I go, I say it every time. Like how do you, or you could have asked or like whatever, I wasn't upset. I just thought it's so funny. Like, what you do and don't see in Twitter. So I thought I'm going to make this chart. So I think you might have seen it on Twitter.
Yeah.
I made this graph that showed all the different editions of D&D and how they related to each other.
Right. And
And
then people
so,
began arguing about it.
and of course they did, and that's fine because
Yes.
it's, you're going to argue, but it also got like Joe Manganiello shared it on
Mm-hmm.
his thing that
Mm-hmm.
it's my biggest tweet of all time, right? And so I thought I'm going to take that idea and make a video about the different editions of D&D, and because I own pretty much all of
You
them,
really do. You have an extensive collection.
it's pretty, yeah. I don't throw anything out. So as you've seen, I show my old character sheets on there.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought I'll make a video where I show what these different, editions are, so that people understand when you say OD&D or Zero E, like, what is that?
Right. Right.
And all the different stages along the way. And that video, for me, exploded. That was the one, and I was like, oh, people really like that. And so I made a follow-up, which was all 18 advanced D&D hardback books. And at the
Mm-hmm.
time, I had all of them but one. I have now taken care of that one, thanks to a kind viewer who sent me a copy. So I made that video, and that one did really well. And I thought, like, okay, so now I need to follow up. What am I going to do? And I started just thinking of ideas like, where do these concepts come from? Like, we all take the 6 ability scores for granted because
Right.
they're in the game, but like, why is it those 6, and why only 6, and where did that idea come from? And then starting to back into that, and I've just found all this fascinating stuff that like nobody really talks about. So that's kind of, yeah,
And it's people are fascinated by it.
yeah,
Folks are just we're in a couple Facebook groups together,
yeah.
and I mean the people in the what is it, the Ancient Dungeons and Dragons group. I mean they're just like, he's my favorite YouTuber of all time.
Yeah, it's it's like overwhelming in a way, and I mean that in such a good way, because I never would dream that. That's not why I did it, but I love that people watch and they're interested, and especially love that they watch when my videos are like an hour or 90 minutes long.
Yeah, it just like I
And
said, I think I said in one of my last things, it takes me 3 or 4 sittings to get through the whole thing.
yeah, and it's like, but people are so kind about it. Like, somebody just commented just yesterday on one of my videos, and he said, "I really love your videos, and I wish that I could watch them all together for
Yeah.
the algorithm to help your channel do better." And I was like,
Mm-hmm.
"You don't need to apologize for that." Like, it was so sweet. I was just like, I just love that you're watching and that you're interested, and it's something that I created that, when you start out, you don't, I'm sure you have the same thing. You have no idea how many people are going to watch and what they're going to get into, and then you start seeing like the same people commenting, and you're
Mm-hmm.
like, I have fans. And like, that's again not why I did it, but
Right.
that's why I try so hard to keep up on the comments, because that I just want people to know how grateful I am that people are interested in what I'm talking about,
Yeah, and I think that really comes across in all your stuff. And talking about folks who have been around for a while, I have King Eric. We already talked to King Eric. The greatest of all is probably one of the greatest YouTube names I've ever seen. But Avenue Studios is on. Mage's Musings are on. I
Oh
saw
yeah.
gamers on games here. These are folks that I've interacted with online for a while. Dave from Gamers on Games and the folks from Avenue Studios. They were at EcclesiaCon that I was at. They came down. It was
Nice.
Avenue Studios was the people I had never met. They're from the Rochester area, like never met in person. We did a couple streams online, and they're like, I said, hey, I'm going to do a convention. Like, we're coming to run games. I'm like, you live like 6 hours away, and I'm going to be doing this in a
So
church
cool.
basement. And it was just this cool thing. And
That's
it
awesome.
really is. It's amazing when you create something. It's so terrifying to put it out there because you're just terrified that no one's going to want it. No one's going to care. And I remember getting my first comment on the video, and I was like, wait, someone left, like, I was floored. Like, I couldn't believe they had it. And all
Right.
these friendships and relationships and fans, like folks I might only interact with through comments, all comes from the channel. And it's really cool. And you
Yeah.
are one of the best. You really
Oh,
are.
I appreciate that. Thank
So
you.
yeah.
Yeah, and like so that first video that I put down, like,
Hmm.
I don't tell people this very often. I sat on that for about 9 months. I had it
You
recorded,
did not.
and I didn't post it because I was like, I don't know how to do this. I don't know what I'm doing. And I do have a little bit of this thing of like, I don't want to do something and screw it up.
Right.
I want to
Okay.
do it right. And so I was like, how do I do this? And so I spent that time watching all these channels. And again, when you started, because we were friends on Twitter, I feel like before you'd started your YouTube, or
Yes. Well,
maybe
it was
right
right about
around
the
the same
same
time.
time. Yep.
Right. And so I was like, okay, this guy's starting from scratch. We're gonna watch and see what he does. And that's why I was asking you, like, how many followers do you think you're gonna get in like this time? And like, and you know, we were DMing each other and you were
Right.
like giving me all this advice. And I was like, okay, so I was trying to have, you know, my expectations set. And then finally I was like, I gotta just put this out there and see what happens.
Mhm.
I'm holding myself back for no reason. And so I just posted the video and there you go.
It's and the rest is history. Tim Pasinek, I hope I'm pronouncing your names right. Just he pointed out, I love both your guys' channels. Keeps me going to be inspired for my own game. Hard for this old grognard to keep up, but some days. But hey, which is great. And
Yeah, for sure.
and I did get asked from Mage's Musings if I'm going to try to make Dungeon Ministers, who is another really good YouTuber. If you've
Oh
not watched
yeah,
him,
yeah.
if I was going to make his Clericon this year, because he runs his own convention, which is where I got the idea to do my EcclesiaCon. And no, I will not
Oh,
be
okay.
going up there for that because A, I don't have that much time off, and B, I don't have a passport right now. I have to get one,
Huh.
which is one of those things. But yeah, he does it up in his little town that he's part of. That is actually the town from the campaign that he's running for his family.
Oh, that's
So you
cool.
get to go do a tour of Honeywood, which is really kind of fun.
Oh, that's fun.
And yes, King Eric, the greatest of all, is asking what the name of your channel is. It is Daddy Rolled a One, which is pretty cool.
Super easy. Yeah.
Yes, which is nice. And one thing for folks who don't watch your channel, they may not realize you do not show your face on your videos.
I don't.
You don't
So
do an
that was
intro, you don't do an exit. It just goes right to the books. Why is
yeah, so
that?
this is a big deal to do this with you and show my face. So, um it started really with my daughter. So, you know, she was a tween at the time. She's now almost 15, but at the time she was probably like 11
Uh
or
huh. Uh
something,
huh.
12. And I was talking to her about I want to do this YouTube channel. And she's like, I can help. Like, you know, it's like I could do all the things. And um she didn't help. So but one of then she was kind of like, you know, kids go through stuff in that middle school year. Kids are
Yeah.
mean
Yeah.
and
Oh yeah.
they're, you know, and she was very concerned that if I was on YouTube and I was talking about the game that she's in, which I do, that somehow people would find that and use it as an excuse to make fun of her. And so she was like, "Dad, please don't show your face," just because, you know, if they saw me drop her off at school and then saw this thing, then would make a
Okay.
connection, whatever was going through her tween age mind at the
Yes.
time.
Yes. Yes.
And I was like, you know, that's fine. And then I realized like this gives me, I don't want to say an advantage, but it gives me a point of difference because most people do the talking head in front of the bookshelves and you know
I
and
feel
I think
seen.
that's great, but I just realized like partly this is my office, my home office where I work my day job as
Hmm.
well. And I realized like as you can see, my camera's very grainy and my bookshelves are not like my D&D books mostly are over here, but I have some over here
Yeah.
and then I've got some back here and I didn't have the great backdrop. All these things went through my mind and I was like, you know, really what I want to do is just show stuff off. I want to show the books that I have and talk about them.
Hmm.
And I realized I don't need to show my face to do that. And nobody wants to look at my face anyway. They want to look at the books, right? So, and because I do have some older things that a lot of people just don't have, or they did have and they got rid of them, there's that nostalgia factor, right? So that's what people want to focus on.
Yeah.
So give them what they want, you know?
Give the people what they want,
Yeah.
which is good. And then Mage's Musing just pointed out. Then when Dad suddenly becomes popular, the whole tune changes. But she's actually okay with you showing your face now.
Um,
Maybe a little bit.
okay is probably a strong word. Like, so she is. I told you she's on vacation this week with her best friend, who was also in the D&D campaign. And
Okay.
then when you hear me talk about that, the dad player,
Yeah.
that's the
The
dad
dad
of
player.
the friend that she's going with. So their family took my daughter with them on vacation this year, and
Okay.
that's their gift to my daughter for her birthday, which is super sweet.
That's
So,
awesome.
um, so my point is, she actually doesn't know that I'm doing this right now.
We're at the level of maybe not bother, but she won't throw up when she finds out. Like that's
No, yeah, I mean, yeah, like she went through a phase, like you know, I would take pictures of us during our D&D games because I want to share them, like I share them on social media, and
right.
I was like, you know, because I want people to know, like I'm not making this up. I actually do run a game for kids, and kids will still play old school D&D. And she was like, "Don't, you can't post that. don't post that, like whatever. And she's kind of past that
Dad. Right.
now. I
Okay.
think she just realized like I'm gonna do it anyway. And I hate to say that because it sounds like I'm not taking her feelings into account.
Yeah.
I
Yeah. Yeah.
definitely do, but I just want to know like there's nothing to be embarrassed about, right? It's just like
Mm-hmm.
we're not doing anything wrong. And if people are gonna make fun of you, well, let me put it this way. If people are gonna make fun of you, they don't need that as an excuse. They're gonna do it anyway, right?
Also, and
So
if
like
people are going
they're
to make fun of you for having joy,
yeah,
then that says everything about them and literally nothing about you.
exactly.
So,
Exactly.
yep. So good stuff. I love everything. I did have someone had said, I think that chart would be cool to look at. Do you still have the image file somewhere?
I 100% do. Yeah. So
Did you put it on your
where
blog?
yeah, I'll put it on my blog. Yeah, it's mostly I think I put it on Twitter and Instagram,
Right.
but I can definitely upload it to my blog.
And if it like
Um,
just as an invite, not to put you on the spot, as we're sitting here streaming live on the internet, if you want to publish it on DM Tales, you want to write it up, I'll publish it there too.
okay,
Although
great. Yeah, just
you have
remind
a
me.
much
You know,
farther reach than I do at this point. So,
well, my blog is very small because I haven't kept up with it as
hmm,
much. So, um, I have like fewer than 1,000 followers on my blog, which I've been keeping since like 2011.
right,
I've got, as of this weekend, 9,000 followers on YouTube, and
that's
I've only been doing
amazing.
that for a year and 3 months. So,
Yeah, I am. I'm trying to hit 3,000. You've like blown right
I
by me.
know I saw that. Sometimes
So,
I feel bad because I'm like, you started before I did. I don't really know what it was. Like,
Kismet.
I didn't. Yeah, it just. I had one video after like at the 3 month mark, and as just to give you an example, most of my videos end up topping out at between 7 and 10,000 views. Let's say
Right.
7 to 8.
Mm-hmm.
I have one video from last year that got over, let's like 75,000 views,
Jeez Louise.
and that was the one that like it exploded, and like
Okay.
I got all these people that followed me, and it like just happened so fast. So
Mm-hmm.
um yeah, and I don't know what it was. I talked to Professor Dungeon Master about this because I feel like
Mm-hmm.
he really pays attention to the analytics and that
Right.
stuff.
Right. Right.
I was like, I don't know what happened, and he's like, you never will. He's like, you'll never know.
It
Whatever you did, something worked. And I've gone back and I've tried to analyze it. Like, did I use certain words? Did I promote it differently? No,
no.
just
Something
whatever.
clicked and someone shared and just for that.
Yeah.
So
And it's still to this day, it's got more than twice as many views as my second most popular video.
that's amazing, which is
Yeah.
great. And it does. I mean, it helps that you're dealing mostly with D&D,
Oh,
which
for
is the
sure.
120 or like the 2-ton gorilla in the room, right? So if
Yeah.
you're actually
Yeah.
dealing with D&D, you tend to, and the algorithm does find you a little bit better than that.
That's true.
Whereas I'm like, here, let me do this obscure thing from Monty Cook Games, and we'll see if anybody wants to
Yeah,
watch
but
it.
the thing is that doing that is so important. Those types of channels like that are important because otherwise those games don't have a champion, you know?
Yeah, and I'm glad to do it, which is fun. Someone did point Mage's Musings. If you ever watch Mage's Musings, it's a series of puppets. So King Aaron
Yes,
pointed out that if I use puppets in my videos, my views would skyrocket. Just regular because he wouldn't be looking at my face anymore, which would be
that's
great.
really funny.
That is
You
actually
should you should do like a collaboration.
I yeah, there's a lot of collaborations I actually have to. Sock puppet D&D Coolio. Okay, that's good. Don't listen to it, Wes. He knows not what he speaks. I'm still waiting for my vids to Mage's Musing, still waiting for his videos to skyrocket. Yeah, it's one of those things. We're all trying to beat the algorithm, but we have somebody who you've proved that it can be done, which is great. Um, and I'm excited because folks don't realize why today is the day
Yes.
that you are on, because what did you just do literally minutes before you came on to the stream today?
Yeah, so I launched my first Kickstarter ever. First thing I've published myself. So I have published for RPGs before, um, a long time ago for
Mm-hmm.
but for someone else. And so this is the first thing that I've self-publishing and
Mm-hmm.
my first Kickstarter. So try to be kind, but yeah. So it's a book that is it's a supplement. I call it a supplement. It's 40 pages, but um, it's really designed for old school essentials or BX works for both,
Right.
obviously because they're 100% compatible. But it, I'd say 70 to 80% of the content could be used in any class and level system,
Mm-hmm.
even in 5e, right? You could at least be inspired by it.
Yeah, throw
And,
it into
I know
fantasy age, do whatever you want to do. Yeah, sure.
yeah, you're going to have to tweak some mechanics or add some
Mm-hmm.
or whatever, but for the most part, the ideas and the content would work there. So it's designed for expert and specialist type characters. So the way that I approached it was taking, because BX, the simplicity of BX is part of what makes it so good.
Mm-hmm.
And I know this, but like the idea that, like, you have these archetype classes, you've got fighter, cleric, magic user, but you don't have tons of, well, there are no subclasses and all
Right.
feats and blah blah blah, right? So what I did was say, well, if you want to play an expert type character, but still be a cleric, here's
Mm-hmm.
some things that you can do to do that, and it's like little minor tweaks. And I will say, what I was inspired by doing this by Dyson Logos, if you know,
Yeah.
the map
Excellent map
maker,
maker. Yes.
excellent map maker, but also creates content a lot of people don't think about beyond maps, right? And
Mm-hmm.
so years ago had this series on their blog, I think it was on their blog, called D12 subclasses, and it was like making tweaks to characters, and that's what inspired me to do this, but with specific themes,
Okay.
right?
Okay.
So these are expert themes, and I've written a whole bunch of these that are on my blog, but I'm tightening them up. And
Okay.
so the ones that you're going to see in this book are not the ones that were on my blog. They're inspired by that. Some of them are similar, but some of them are just tightened up, like
Gotcha.
I said.
And what is the title
Um,
of this book?
it is called Alchemy, Explosives, and Inventions. And the reason it's called that is because there are 3 new classes for this book: Alchemists, Demolitionists, and Inventors.
And are they
And
riffing off the existing tropes or are they brand new?
so those 3 are brand new.
Okay.
I built them using, there's a couple books out there that you can get, very cool books for old school essentials about how to build classes, so you can figure out the experience
Oh,
point tables
cool.
and
Okay.
figure out, like, oh, I'm adding this ability, I have these saving throws, how much would that cost in an experience point, kind of thing.
Neat.
So I use those to double check the math, for the balance.
Okay.
But the ideas of what the classes can do, those came out of things that I've been thinking about for, almost 2 decades at this point. So
Gotcha. Okay.
I talked about, like, how long I had my video before I posted it. I've had this book technically written since 2021, and I finally, it was just like, I got to get this out there.
But
And so
you've been working on it longer than that.
yes, I started on it during, oh, yes. So, um, I don't know. Do we have time for me to tell the story?
Go
I'll try
tell
to be quick.
tell the story of where the origin of this book comes from.
So, back in the 3E days, I was very involved on message boards on Ian World. And one of the people that was on Ian World all the time was Matt Sprang, not sure how to pronounce his last name, but he was the publisher of Mongoose Publishing,
Okay.
right? And he was talking about the series of books that they had that were essentially trying to kind of like mimic the complete handbooks from second edition. So there was like the Complete Fighter's Handbook and all
Gotcha.
that stuff. So they put out a series called the Quintessential. So it's not complete, it's the Quintessential Fighter, the Quintessential Ranger. Like, they had all these things,
Totally different.
and totally different. And but for three mechanics, of course. And so somebody asked him, like, what other books do you want to see? And so he's like, they were like, do you take ideas? And so I was like, I have an idea. And so I wrote him and said, I would be interested in writing a book called The Quintessential Aristocrat, which, if your
Mm-hmm.
viewers don't
Mm-hmm.
know, in the 3rd edition of D&D, they had what they called NPC classes
Okay.
that were focused in different areas. There was an adept, which is like a very low level spellcaster,
Okay.
and there was a warrior, and there was an aristocrat, and there was an expert, and there was a commoner. But these were NPC classes that you could take and get levels in. They just weren't as good as regular player character classes.
Mm-hmm.
And I've always been intrigued by nobles in D&D. There's no noble class. Star Wars D20 had a noble class. Dragonlance D20 had a noble class, but like base D&D never had one.
Huh.
And so I said, I'd like to write a book about how to play a noble character using the quintessential aristocrat. And he's like, cool, send me a proposal. And he got back to me, totally surprised me. I wasn't expecting that. So I was like, well, now I have to come up with an idea and a proposal. And so I outlined it and I sent it to him. And he's like, this is cool. This is cool. Take this out, add this, blah, blah, blah. And so he's like, okay, cool. Can you have it done? And I was like, I have no idea. I'd never written one before. And so I just gave him a time, and then I forced myself to get it done within that time period. And I wrote it, and they published it and paid me for it, which was very cool. and it was a PDF, and it's still available. Like you can go to Drive Through RPG or go to the Mongoose site, and you'll see a list of their PDFs, and you'll see my name on there, Martin Thomas. That's me. And so then he wrote to me and he said, "Would you be interested in writing another one?" And I was like, "Sure. What do you want?" He's like, "I wanted the quintessential expert." And so I started working on it and never finished it. And then 4E came out, and it was just like, there's no point in continuing that because they're not going to publish it at that point.
Mm-hmm.
But I'd spent a lot of time on that, and so a lot of these ideas came from the work that I did to write the quintessential expert. None of the mechanics, because 3.5
Three
is
five
so
so
different,
different. Yeah.
but just ideas of like what would be an expert type character, and like what would they be trying to accomplish,
Gotcha.
what is the role that they would have in the game to, and like what,
Mm-hmm.
and so
Mm-hmm.
that's what this game is, and or supplement is. It's got ideas for players, it's also got ideas for DMs, like how to run an expert campaign, how to give challenges to players who want to play experts, how to there's a guild hall, so you could use that as a base of operations, and it's got all these NPCs and stuff in there,
Mm-hmm.
and secrets and rumors and treasures and all kinds of things. And that one, I'm really excited about the guild hall because I designed it in such a way that I did. So every room is described by the senses. So it's not just what you see, but it's what you smell, what you
Mm-hmm.
hear
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
when you enter this room. Bullet point, very quick to grab that. And then also, like, it has ideas for like how can the PCs interact within this room, because it's a guild hall. It's not a place where normally you'd be moving around too much. But
Gotcha.
like in the courtyard, what can the PCs do here? And then every once in a while I'll give, like, maybe you need to make a reaction roll or do something like that and see what happens. um but then there's tables for these rooms where there's like rumors and secrets and things like that. And in old school games they tell you like, this one's false, this one's partially false, this one's true. I didn't do that. I wrote them all down, and then I leave it up to the referee to decide which ones are true or false. And if they don't know, I gave them a little. They can roll and figure out. They just roll a d6, and on
Okay.
a 1 to 2, it's true. On a 3 to 4, it's partially true, and on a 5 to 6, it's false. But what that allows the referee to do is create their own story, right, based
Mm-hmm.
on these secrets that are in there, and then you reuse it, right? It's
Okay.
replayable because the next time maybe the secrets are different or whatnot, and
Mm-hmm.
you change the names of the NPCs, and your players are probably not going to recognize that it's the same kind of place, but you can just use these ideas over and over again. So
That's awesome. Have you
yeah.
ever considered working like forward and writing some adventures that use these guilds to show people how to do it, or is that not on your radar?
I hadn't thought about writing adventures necessarily. I mean, it's something I could consider if people are super interested in this. I mean, we'll see how the campaign does. Um,
The reason why I ask is because a guild centric adventure would be a really interesting concept that I don't think a lot of people do.
yeah, no, I think you're right. I mean, you could almost consider what I put in this book. So it's 8 pages, right? There's an introduction. Everything's
Hmm.
on a
Hmm.
two-page spread.
Right.
So the Guild Hall is 3 stories. It's actually based on a real medieval guild in England, and the guy that helped me make the maps, he actually used to run the one-page dungeon contest years ago. That's how I met him.
Oh, okay.
And so he did the maps for me. And what I found out from this guild hall is, so it goes back to like the 1300s, but over the years it's been used for different purposes. Once guilds were kind of not a thing anymore,
Right.
it was a civic building, and then they used it like as a jail, and then they stored weapons in there like for the town guard and like all this kind of stuff. So what I did was I took all of that and said, this, it's all happening concurrently in the guild. So there is an armory in this guild, as well as all the different rooms for the different guilds. This particular guild hall was home to a collection of guilds. It wasn't just like, the bankers guild. It was a
Right.
collection. So there's different rooms in here where, like, okay, this is the I'm trying to think of the
Wait,
name,
wait,
like
wait,
the
wait.
table.
It was a guild co op?
Kind of, yes, exactly.
Okay.
So it
I like
there's
this.
like let's say there's like a bankers guild in here, and then there's the tailors guild, and there's like the butchers guild or like whatnot. So each one of those rooms in this thing is like an office for that guild to like hold their meetings,
That's
but
awesome.
they don't all get along, right? So I write in there like, you can see the seeds of like, that guy probably doesn't like this guy, and so it
Gotcha.
could become its own adventure because each floor is then a 2-page spread.
That's got its
And
own
so some
thing.
of the stuff comes from like this guy doesn't want to be on that floor. He wants to be on this floor. I know it sounds silly, but like
He
there's
wants the
reasons why
corner
that can be
office. Yeah,
right.
yeah.
No, that's essentially what it is. And then, but there's also like, there's the giant hall in the middle.
Mhm.
And in medieval times, they would use those as gathering places for
Yeah,
stuff.
yeah.
And so I have a section in there of like, maybe there's a town emergency and this is where everybody's meeting. And then what does that mean? And how can the PCs get involved? And
Gotcha.
so it's, yeah.
King Eric the Greatest of All wants to know if there is a cheesemakers guild.
There, I mean, in real life,
Yeah.
yes. In my guild hall, there is not, but that's the beauty of this. I've labeled what they are. If you want a cheesemakers guild, keep the room the same and just change the title, and then you'd have to, change the smells. It smells like cheese or like whatever, right? But
Right.
it would be very easy to put that in.
There you go. Well, he also put out that he would volunteer to be the cheese cutter, which shows you everything you need to know
Got it.
about King Eric the Greatest of All's
Okay.
personality. So thanks, Eric. Uh, he's in my Facebook group too. He's awesome.
That's funny.
Very much appreciate. Love. I love the concept. I love that anybody who watches your videos knows that if you're going to do something, you're going to go back and research it. So the fact that you went is like, oh, let me go find this medieval guild hall and look at how it was used. It's like,
Yeah, that's funny. I
that's
didn't think of that,
Martin.
but yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly the type of thoroughness that we would expect from you, which is great. Whereas I would just be like, yeah, there's rooms, there's a thing. These things go boom. It's fine. But you go deep, which is great. I think that's one of the big appeals of your channel too, by the way.
Huh,
Um,
thanks.
so you've described what's in it. We described how long it's been going on. Kickstarter is live today. What are first off, and it's not just one cover. There's two covers, and I put the alt cover up once already. But here is the alt cover for this,
Yeah,
which is a limited edition hardback
limited edition hardcover.
of a
So,
40-page book that's print on demand. But I love that you're
I
going
know.
for it.
I know. So that idea kind of came from, so again, I told you I've been working on this forever, right? So the actual writing of this book supplement had done for, like I said, at least 3 years. I mean, I've noodled with it here and there, but like the bulk of it was done, including the layout. So, um, I had a good friend of mine. If you saw on my channel, um, where I talked about running Ravenloft for my friend's 50th birthday
Yeah, yeah,
party,
yeah.
that was like a one shot.
Mm-hmm.
So one of the guys in that, the tallest one, if I showed a picture of us, he made the shirts for us. So he's my designer friend. And so
Okay.
he did the layout for the book. He did the original cover. And then as we were getting close to publication, because it's been a number of years since he did the original cover, I think he looked at it again. He's like, I can do something different. And so he came to me with the idea and he's like, what if I did a new design? He offered, didn't make me pay for it, which is super nice. And he's like, and you offer it as a hardcover, and then you have a differentiation of
Uh-huh.
like the two different covers. And I thought, that's a cool idea. Like, just again, have something different.
Mm-hmm.
And so far, what I've seen is I think that's the more popular of the
I
covers.
I do think
So
that that is
yeah,
the more popular cover at this point. That's at
yeah.
least that's the
So
one I ordered.
okay, cool. So the design is great, and it's my picture that I showed doesn't really do it justice because he's got so many details in
Mm-hmm.
that cover. Like when you actually get it and you're able to like look at it, um, just he's got writing all around that says all these cool things, and all the designs and stuff are related to alchemy or explosives or
Mm-hmm.
inventions and things
Mm-hmm.
like that. And when I put this, the screen capture, I just don't think it does justice to the amount of work he put into the cover.
It
It's really cool.
it looks really, really cool. Have you held it physically yet?
No, I haven't. So he just sent me that design last week. This was a
Okay.
late idea. So I still have to upload the files into drive through and then order the PODs to see how they look.
Okay.
And I'm going to be doing that this week so that hopefully by the time the campaign's over, it should just be ready to go. So
Okay.
um, that's a cool thing about this, at least so from the PDF standpoint. If you order the PDF or you order the combo with the hardback and the
Mm-hmm.
PDF will be ready to go like the day that the campaign's over. Hopefully it funds, and
Awesome.
I'll be able to send the codes for that to
Cool.
redeem. And
Nice.
yeah,
And then you're hoping to ship by August is what the goal is, correct?
yeah. I mean, I said August. It should be sooner. It's just I've never done anything like this through drive through or anybody.
Yep.
So I don't know the process. I know that like I have to upload the files and then order them and see how they come back. And my hope is that, I've sent all the specs to my design guy, my friend,
Mm-hmm.
and he is an artist, by trade, so he knows all that.
Okay.
So my hope is he's able to create the files in such a way that there's no printing problems. I just put August in case there is a printing problem, we have to fix something and redo it.
Sounds
The
good.
other reason I put August was my hope is I did add a stretch goal. I wasn't sure whether to do that, but
Oh, I didn't even
because this is
see.
taking me so long to write,
Okay.
um, I actually have 4 additional pages of content that I've already written, and I don't want it to go to waste,
Oh, okay.
but I didn't want to delay the campaign to have my guy lay it out and put it in here. So I'm using that as sort of like a bonus for people. If we hit $1,300, it's a very low bar. Um,
I'm showing it
then
right
I'll
now to folks.
then I'll
So,
add the additional 4 pages. I've already showed it to my designer friend, and he's like, "Yeah, that's no problem. That'll be." But it's all tables, so it's tables for each of the different concepts.
okay.
So, as an example, one of the concepts in here, um, they're very similar to 2E kits if people are familiar with 2E, but
Mm-hmm.
not as detailed.
Okay.
So not paragraphs. It's like it's a chart with like one little like here's a benefit, here's a hindrance, basically, and then like a short description of
It's
what it is.
it's
So
designed
one of
for
the
BX.
right, it's
Yeah.
designed for BX, but you want to keep it very, very simple. So
Mm-hmm.
one of the ideas is a relic hunter, which is a cleric, right? I was inspired in my head by Indiana Jones. So I had this idea of like you're a cleric, so you get some thief skills to find traps and things like that, right?
Uh-huh.
But then the balance of that is I forget exactly what it was, but the balance is like I think some of the armor you don't get as much armor, like
Right.
you can't wear heavy armor,
Okay.
right? And that's there's a little give and take, right? But the additional content, if we hit the stretch goal, is I have a table for generating relics that a relic hunter might find. So, and it's
Oh.
like tables of like it's adjective of the thing, like
Yeah, yeah,
whatever,
yeah, yeah.
and you roll like multiple times. And so even though it's one table, you can generate dozens and
I
dozens of different relics
love
from there.
tables like that. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That should be
So I do
fun.
too. And I had fun coming up with the ideas, but that's just one table, and I have one of those for each different um,
Nice.
you know, concept in here.
That's really cool. And what are the different pledge levels that people can go for? Because
So
everybody's going to back this, right? Yes.
yeah, I hope so. So the lowest pleasure level is the PDF, $4, which I think is pretty reasonable. And then you can get PDF, and you can get the soft cover POD as a
Mhm.
combo, and then you can get the hardcover or the hardcover with the PDF as a combo, and then all of the options except for the PDF only. So anything that has a physical component, so the soft cover or the hardcover, um, there's an add-on. You mentioned earlier I'd sent you one of my shirts. You have
Yeah.
the option to add on $5, and I'll give you a code to buy one of my shirts like at print cost. So you pay the printing,
Oh, okay.
but you're still going to end up saving money, even though you're paying the $5 here.
Uh-huh.
You're going to save money because you're printing at cost, and so
Oh,
you
neat.
save like over 10% off of if you just went to my shop normally.
I'll have to
So
go
that's an
back
add.
and do that. He has cool. So you have your. I should put your web store up, but you have like the
That's what I'm on
patents
right
for
now.
the dice. Is that what the one you
Yep.
have on right now?
Yeah, this is so 3 different patents. So this is the D20, this is
Right.
the D8, and this is the D4, and I just put them all together on one shirt. But I sell them each individually.
And then you have the. I always said that they're the dice goblins, but it's really an
Yes,
adventuring party that is fighting a D20 that is a Tarask.
right. So yes, the D20 is the Tarask because they have 20-sided hit die, right?
Sure.
And then um there's a pixie that is a D4 because D4 hit die. There's a D6, which is the sorcerer. There's a D8, which is the druid, but the druid is wild shaped as a crocodile. So it's a D8 look like a crocodile.
Uh huh.
And there's a D10 paladin, and there's a D12 barbarian, but they're all like little dice, drawings. So
That's my favorite chart.
I love that
It's a
shirt.
really
So
good shirt.
that design I gave so it's the same guy that did the covers for this and
Okay.
did the layout. He designed that shirt. And I just gave him an idea of like I kind of want to do something like this, and I didn't even draw it out. I just kind of said like, I think I just wrote him some bullet points, and he came up with that design, and I was like, I don't have any changes. Like just this is it. So um yeah, I love that shirt. So yeah.
It is a great shirt. Two questions from the chat. First off, from King Eric. So get ready. Is
All
the
right.
Holy Grail one of the relics that you can create?
It is not. So I was trying to be, I was trying to come up with stuff like here. I actually have it open. Give me a second here. I just want to give you an idea of what would be
So
in
you
here.
didn't put a grail in your relic
I
then.
might have a grail, but I'll give you an idea just so you can get a sense of like where. So
I
what
might cancel my pledge if there's no grail in the relic
you
thing.
know that one of the things I like to do is I do like what I call like weird stuff. If you remember that, I
Yes.
was doing that a lot.
Oh, that was yes.
So
You would do Twitter things. You're like, here, come up with something weird for this.
right,
That was fun.
exactly. So I that carries through pretty much everything that I do. So sorry, I'm trying to scroll to this page because I just want to give you guys an idea. Okay, here we go. Where is it, Wes? I know I have it
You.
somewhere.
It's only the book
Oh,
you
okay,
wrote.
okay, okay, okay. All right. So sorry for the wait. Okay, so it's a D12 table and it's item and then of the and then source.
Okay.
So I'm looking to see there, there's no grail on here, but here's the thing, I haven't published this yet, so
You
I
can
can
change it.
always replace one of these and add a grail. But it's got things like lanterns and shrouds and tablets and harps, and then like the sources would be like
Okay.
the Frog King or the Hallowed Concordant or the Scorned Goddess. And the thing is, that's another thing that I like to do, and you'll notice this as you go through the book. I call it minimalist world building, and again,
Yeah.
that's not a term I came up with,
Mm-hmm.
but the idea is like I don't know who the Scorned Goddess is. I have no idea, but I'm not going to tell you. You figure that out for your campaign, but it inspires you to come up with
Yeah.
an idea, and I do that with like my players. I ask them like, hey, I'll put them on the spot and ask them a question, and then based on what they answer, then I feel like okay, now I have to figure out how to put that into the game, right?
Yeah. That's how my
And
entire background for my basic fantasy RPG campaign unveiled. They found a secret room.
perfect.
There was a statue
Yeah,
of a goddess nobody knew, and they're like, "That has to be important." I'm like, "Sure,
right.
that's good."
Right. And the thing is, but if they didn't respond to it, then I wouldn't bother with it.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Not at
Because
all.
I don't want to have to create any more than I need to. And
Mm-hmm.
so I've learned in over, however many decades of doing this, that the thing I create that I think is super cool is going to be the thing that they're the least interested in.
Yep.
And the thing that I put the least amount of time in is the thing that they're going to focus on. So I might as well just wait and see what they're going to focus on and then riff and come up with what
They
that is.
will
Right.
examine the broken statue lying in the puddle for an
Yep.
hour and a half and
100%.
ignore every NPC you introduce to the game.
Yeah, and the thing is, I'm okay with that
Yeah,
because I want them to have fun.
if
So
that's
if
fun
that's
for
what
you,
makes them have fun, then and the thing is that I've learned over time that it ends up being fun for me as well
sure.
because I get to be surprised by what they come up with.
Mm-hmm.
And I've
I
tried
will
to do
I will say this though. That's one of the things that I appreciate about Shadow Dark is you can do that, but I'm gathering the monsters that are going to eat you when the torch runs out at the end. So spend the hour.
right,
Go ahead. Spend the hour to do that. That's great.
right. So there's always a time limit. So I
Mm-hmm.
always do that where like when they start to do something like that, I say, okay, roll a d4, and they know as soon as I say roll the d4, they're like, oh. I'm like, so whatever that number is in that many rounds, or sometimes it's turns, sometimes it's hours. It just depends on the
Yeah.
circumstances. Something's going to happen, and it's probably not going to be something that you're super happy with.
Yeah.
But then it adds that like
There's
that
tension to
anxiety.
it. Yeah.
There's
There's some
tension. Exactly, that's a better
real
word.
stakes
And yeah,
at play, which is cool. Second question coming from Mage's Musings. So this is not a landmine at all. Came
uh-oh.
in late. Have you discussed your absolute favorite edition and why?
We have not discussed it. My absolute favorite dish. So
I like them all equally.
yeah, I
The
was gonna
parent
say,
answer.
the cheater answer is to say whichever one I'm playing at the time.
Uh huh.
I'm gonna just say, so let me tell you first off, I'm assuming when you say edition, you're talking Dungeons and Dragons, so I'm gonna
Probably
stick with Dungeons and
yes.
Dragons. I will tell you which ones I have played, which are BX.
Okay.
I've played 1E. I've never played 2.
You
I've
never
played
played
3E
two.
3.5.
Okay.
No, and there's a story there.
Okay.
Um, uh, so 3, 3.5, 4, and 5. So I've played those 6. Now, with having played BX, I also feel like
You've played
that's
Back Me.
technically the same.
Yeah.
Beck Me and
Yeah.
the Black Box and Classic,
Yeah.
those are all kind of together, right? different from Holmes, so I'm not going to count Holmes in that. But
Mhm.
so of those at the moment right now, my favorite is BX. And the reason is, again, I am not one who strives for system mastery. And one of the things that I definitely noticed starting with third edition on is that the game has shifted to be more in the power of the players and the ideas that are coming out.
Mhm.
It's the Magic the Gathering model on D&D, right?
Right.
It's how do we sell things? And if you think about every new card that comes out for Magic, all that card is doing is breaking a rule that's already there.
There you
And
go.
I don't mean that in a bad way, but that's what it does, right?
I have
It's
literally never played Magic.
so it's just you have rules.
Yeah.
You can put this card down at this time and
Mhm.
this card does this, and then a new set of cards will come out and they'll say, oh, except if you have this card it can do this. That's all
Okay.
feats are, and that's all spells are, right? In
Yeah.
D&D,
Yeah.
it's you can't you can only move this far unless you cast haste, and then you can move this far,
Right.
right? You can
Okay.
only attack once,
Here's
and so
right.
right.
Yep.
So but the thing is, what's happened over time is they realize that that's what people want. So every supplement is just extra goodies that allow you to break the rules in certain circumstances
Right.
when everything aligns and you can do all these things at the same time, you could do the cool thing,
Right.
right?
And when you're selling books that the players want, then you're selling more of the stuff. So of course you're
Of
going to go that
course.
way.
And there's nothing wrong with that. They're a business, and I understand why they're doing that. But what I found was as a DM, it's very hard to keep up with what everybody is doing,
Yeah.
and they're going to want to do those things. And also, what to me happens, and again, it doesn't have to be this way, but what I found is when you play that way, you end up limiting yourself because you've built your character to do the cool thing in these circumstances.
Right.
So then there's the assumption that the DM is going to create that circumstance so that you can do that thing. And
Mhm.
then if you're not doing that thing, you are not being effective because that's what you're really good at. So you need to figure out how to
Yeah.
put yourself in a situation to do the thing.
And this is what and if you have a socially oriented character, a
Yeah.
character build, and you get down for like a session and it's all combat, you're like, well, I'll just
Right.
sit here and do my D4. It's fine.
And people, right. And people talk about that all the time. Like, oh, I'm only good at this. And so when this happens, I feel like I'm not contributing.
Right.
And for me, what I've seen in my daughter's game, BX is not like that. So they never look at their sheets. My daughter forgets to bring her character sheet half the time. And
Yep.
it's like it's the game I run for her, but like she is forgets. But the thing is, I know how to run her character without like I know, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's just because there's just not enough numbers that I need to worry about it.
Hmm.
And so they don't look down, they look at me and they say, "Can I try this? Can
Yes.
I do this?"
Hmm.
And when I was playing 3E, I never asked that question. Well, it's not never, but like it was very limited. And the questions I asked were based on the skills and feats and powers that my character had.
Yeah.
These guys don't have that. And so their questions aren't based on their character abilities. It's based on what would this character actually do? What would I do if I were this character, regardless of does it give me a bonus or
Right.
whatever?
Right.
And
Right.
so, and again, I don't know that that's necessarily built into BX, but I think BX enables you to play that better than
Well, because there's
other editions.
the strong lines of where you have to go this direction just aren't there. That's one of the things that I really appreciate about playing EZD6.
Yeah,
Is and for and I have so I've played EZD6 with players who are like, well, I can't, and what you said, system mastery. Like they don't know how to optimize the build because it's
right,
EZD6. It doesn't exist.
right,
But then I'll get a player who has never played any RPG again and will sit down at EZD6 and will be doing stuff with their spell scrolls that I have never would have considered in a million years.
right.
Like one of them had like, well, I can do a mirror walk thing. I'm like, well, so you can go between reflective surfaces? Yeah. They're like, well, is the floor polished? Sure. Okay. Does the dragon's eyes look shiny? Yeah. I'm going to fall through the floor and come out the dragon's eye. I'm like, oh, yes,
Oh,
you
that's
are.
awesome.
Yes, you are.
Yeah,
And this is a
right,
person who had literally never played the game before.
right. And that's, I mean, I think that that's a big thing too. When you haven't played, you don't have these preconceived notions of what you're supposed to do.
Right. It's like,
And
yeah, I'm just going to do this because this is what the rule says. please go have fun. It's great. And that's what I like about those more rules light, mechanics light style games. So
Yeah, 100%.
one of those things, which is why I'm really looking forward to playing Shadow Dark and Dragonbane at some point, which is great. Hi, Dave. Dave from Grimwood Games is on. Um, King Eric wanted to know what your favorite AD&D module is, specifically AD&D.
Yeah. So favorite AT&T.
That's a hard one.
Yeah, because there's a lot. So I'm running U1 Sinister Secret of Saltmarsh right now for my daughter's group. So they left to keep on the board. I love U1. I was very at the time, like this is the 80s, and Wes, you might remember this a little bit,
Yeah.
but like there was a time period where like all things British were coming into the US. It was like,
Oh
I mean,
yes,
they had
when
with the
you
Beatles and
saw,
stuff,
yeah, Fiend
but then
Folio
it was
came
like
all out.
later,
Yeah.
like all
Oh
that
yeah.
new wave music and all that
Mm-hmm,
stuff. And
mm-hmm,
so
mm-hmm.
there was a minute there where I was like, anything British is awesome. I loved the Fiend Folio, which a lot of people don't like. I thought it was awesome. I loved the art. I like everything, right?
I almost bought
And
that the
then
last a couple
so
weeks
I
ago.
love the yeah, I love the use series of modules because specifically because they were from the United Kingdom and they were just different. Like you could just tell looking at like the way it was written,
Mm-hmm.
everything was just like so I love that one and I have very vivid memories of playing through U1 when I was a kid. Now the other one that I would say is probably going to edge that out as far as being my favorite is not one that people normally mention, but it's Lost Caverns of
Oh,
Camp
that's
S4.
my absolute favorite.
Okay, so normally that's not when people pick, and I love it. And what I love about is actually all the stuff before the dungeon, that wilderness
Mm-hmm.
section where you're trying to find the entrance to the caves, and there's all those different factions,
Mm-hmm.
and there's like the gnomes and all these different things. And I was like, that was to me so cool. And I remember
Well, you know what got
my
me is that it came with that extra book.
yeah, right.
Blew my
All the
mind.
monsters and the art and all
Yeah.
that stuff. Um, Many of those monsters, or I think all of them, end up in Monster Manual 2.
Yeah, it's the first appearance of
Um,
the Behir.
right.
So
And I had actually had my dad photocopy from a friend when I was a kid. He went to his office, I know, on the weekend and photocopied it for me. And I still have the photocopy. This is like 1980, what, 3 or something. I still have it to this day, like that photocopied version, just because it's like a memory of my dad doing that for me. And
gotcha.
he had no idea what it was or why I wanted it,
Didn't know
but
that he
I
was
just
breaking
love.
several copyright laws, but we're good. It's
Oh,
fine.
totally, 100%. I mean, it's embarrassing to say now, but
It's the
I,
Wild
I my
West. It's
friend
good.
had it. I really wanted it, and yeah. So, but I just loved reading through that, and the idea that like it is a dungeon crawl, but it was one of the first ones I saw that was a dungeon mixed with this wilderness section,
Right.
and
And that all got
a
added
lot of
in
people
later
don't.
because it was originally a tournament module.
Exactly, I was just going to say that it
Yeah.
was originally just the dungeon for the tournament, and then they added the wilderness section later, and I think that's what made it so different because it wasn't originally intended that way.
Mm-hmm.
But to me, it's almost a whole campaign. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
you
Barrier
know,
Peaks had that treatment done to it too.
very very similar,
Yeah.
yeah. And I love Barrier Peaks from the sci-fi,
Yeah.
science fantasy stuff. And so I've run both S4 and S3 for like old school games for that group that I play Savage Worlds with,
Okay.
and had a blast. I mean, it's so much fun.
You know, I
So
think both those would work really well with Savage Worlds. Just
yeah, I'm
convert
sure
over
that they would. I actually ran them with the original
with the original
AD&D
AD&D.
rules, but I ran them for my Savage Worlds group. Is that same group that we play
Okay.
with? So.
I so my favorite about that U series was actually Danger at Dunwater.
Yeah,
Because they go through, it's like, yes, go through and clear out the dungeon. You're like, yeah, that was not the right thing to do.
that was not the right
That
choice,
was
and it's so funny. Um, so we just played like not this weekend, but weekend before. I was running them through, and I've added a bunch of stuff. And so I added an NPC who got um killed and he was ritually hung upside down. I'm adding a lot of Cthulhu stuff to it. So like
gotcha.
I replaced the lizard men with uh like cultists,
Hmm.
but also there's like the like deep ones, like that kind of thing is
Oh,
in
okay.
there.
Oh,
And,
okay.
and
Yeah.
So I've switched it up. I'm using the basic structure model. But anyway, I introduced this NPC that got killed. He was originally hung upside down. And so he's giving the players a clue to who killed him. And he had kind of told them before that he was going to leave them a note, and the note got intercepted. But anyway, I had him make an L shape with his fingers, and that was the last name of the guy whose family hired to have him killed.
Oh, okay.
And they are obsessed with trying to figure out what this L is. And of course, they don't remember any NPC names, and I'm not going to tell them because that will tell them who it is, right? So, but one of my players, and I love her, she's so involved with the world and everything, and so she keeps going around, and she's like, she made this connection of like they've been fighting these fish people and all this kind of stuff, and so she's like, hang on, is there any name of a race or species of like aquatic seagoing people, like whatever, like this kind of thing. She
Gotcha.
was making that starts with an L. She was like trying to
Mm-hmm.
piece this all together. And I was like, you know what? Locatha starts with an L. Like,
Oh
I just like,
gosh.
and so I just off the top of my head, I was like, yeah, you've heard stories like about these creatures. They're called the Locatha, but most people think they don't exist. It's a myth. Or like, what? But I'm like, well, now I'm going to put that in there. And it just reminded me when
Mm-hmm.
you said danger of tone water,
Put
like,
them in.
because I wasn't intending to run all of the U series. I was going to stop at U1 and then move to something else. But
Oh,
now I'm
okay.
like, it sounds like there might be some more stuff coming.
Let's have some fun with that. That'll be great.
Yeah.
All right,
Yeah.
we have been on for about an hour and a half. So
Oh, yikes. Okay.
just as we break off, because I'm going to have to go pick up my kid from school soon. Where can people find you besides your YouTube channel, Daddy Rolled A1?
So I'm Daddy Roll the One on pretty much every social. So Facebook,
Mm-hmm.
Twitter, Blue Sky. My blog is Daddy Roll the One at blogspot.com.
Mm-hmm.
Or blogspot at Daddy Roll, whatever. It's one of those. But just if you just actually just go online on Google and search for, Daddy Rolled A1, make sure it's
Mm-hmm.
rolled and not rolls. You'll find everything. But if you find me on Twitter, my link tree is on there and it has
Okay,
all of my stuff.
there you go. And it definitely worth following. Check out his YouTube channel for the history videos. Check out his. We'll take a look at your your Kickstarter right now. Let's see where you're at.
Okay.
You are
Oh yeah.
currently at 36 backers and $415.
Wow.
Look at
That's
you.
I'm I'm very happy with that. I was scared. I was scared that it was gonna just be like if you never know, right?
No,
So
I
um
think for you pretty much should have known, but that's okay.
well, but I've never done this before, and like I kept reading all these things like, you know, your pre-launch followers, you're only gonna get 20% of them that actually come
Right.
through and back, and I'm already way over that. So
I think
I'm
for you because everything's. I went down. I'm going to get the special edition. How much is that? $11. Yeah, click.
yeah.
That was like not. That was like not even a thought. I was
Uh,
already
well,
going to do it no matter what. But it's like $11. Press
I'm
that
I'm
button.
glad my designer friend came up with that idea. So
It's
yeah,
a great idea.
thanks.
So please, everybody, go back and do that. Martin, I'm just going to go to my own thing for a little bit, so I'll take you off screen.
Yeah,
Please stay online so I can say goodbye to you properly. I just want to give
okay,
folks an update of what's going on in the channel.
perfect.
And I had a great time. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much again for having me on. This has been great.
And
I'm very honored to be here.
thank you everybody who was commenting and asking weird questions about cheese cutting. Eric, always you. Let me get back. Hold on a second, Martin. I'll
Yeah,
be
perfect.
back with you in a second. So, folks, great conversation with Martin. You can tell has incredible stories, researches everything. If you, like I said, if you have not seen his YouTube channel yet, go check it out because it is fantastic. It is one of the best history of not just D&D, but the game because he's done other stuff as well. And Martin, you're not talking right now, but someone said they do want to see a Tunnels and Trolls video. I don't know if you have one on those yet or not. Um, but here's what's coming up on my channel. Because I was doing this, I did not get a chance to record my video for this week this morning, which is perfectly fine because I've wanted to talk to Martin for a very long time. But I have my review of Forbidden Lands written. So the written review is on my website right now. I have edited it down for the video. That will be my next video on the channel. Household's taking me a little bit of time to get through just because life has come up and I'm having a hard time just sitting down and reading large chunks of this book, but it is a fantastic system, really cool world, and I am looking forward to getting that review up as soon as I can. Heckin' Good Doggos, I still have Old School Essentials version of Dark Places and Demogorgons is still on the queue. And also, I need to grab it, but it's sitting on the shelf behind me, is the Easy D6 version. So it's not the Ironbound system, not Dave's own system. This is the Easy D6 version of Grimwood City has come out. So if you want to play Easy D6 in a kind of like a modern dark fantasy setting, this is a really good book. I'm going to read that. That's probably going to be my next review up on the channel, which should be really fun. I have also had opportunity now to run Forbidden Lands for a session. I've done more than a number of sessions of Dragonbane. I am now planning on doing a playtest session of Symbaroum, just so I can compare those three original IPs, even though two of them started away from Free League, that Free League has put out, to talk about the differences in play style and just my experience with them. So that's going to be coming up on the channel pretty soon as well. A lot coming up, a lot still coming in, and I have had a blast doing all of it. So folks, until we see each other again, happy playing, everyone.